Okay, welcome to the Monday, May 7th, 2012 meeting of the Human Services Committee of the City of Evanston. We have a quorum, and first thing I'd like to ask for is approval of the minutes of the meeting of April 2nd, 2012.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. First item for discussion, review of police complaints. And we have Commander Hartley here tonight to answer any questions with regard to police complaints.
Good evening, Chairman and council members.
Thank you. Any questions on
Nope.
There are no questions. Thank you. At this time, I think it'd be just, since we have Commander Hartley here, if she could give us her communication on the update of the bike enforcement in the downtown area, that would be a timely thing to do, and we could move into that slot.
Yes, sir. The police department has started a spring campaign to educate cyclists on not riding their bicycles on the sidewalks in the downtown business district. So last week we started a campaign with education, and we had signage out just alerting cyclists to not ride their bikes, but if they needed to be on the sidewalk with their bicycles, to just get out and walk with them. This week we'll be stepping up enforcement with that, also still having the signage available. Just some general information. If a cyclist receives a fine, they could pay a minimum of $15 with a maximum of $500 depending on their history, any previous bike violations, or if there's a court appearance involved. So in the areas where it is permissible to ride your bike on the sidewalk, we are asking that cyclists use an audible signal, yield to pedestrians, and have control of their bicycle at all time. And that's basically it. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Alderman Fisk?
Thank you very much. It's really important. Can you tell me how many tickets have been given out so far this year?
Well, it's my understanding that the enforcement on this campaign really stepped up just yesterday, so I don't have that, but I can email that to you.
Okay.
Anyone else? Looks not. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item for discussion is H2. City of Evanston, the United States Environmental Protection Agency, and the United States Geological Survey has partnered to study closures at the Evanston beaches and develop a model to predict water quality. Carl Caneva from our Department of Health will give us a presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. What I wanted to present to you tonight is about our beach water here in Evanston. This is an exciting program that we're going to bring to fruition this summer after about 5 years of hard work from a number of different levels of the city of Evanston. The beaches are one of Evanston's greatest resources, and we want to be able to not only protect them, but to also provide a healthy aspect in order for swimming and patrons to partake at the beach itself. So what I'm going to look at and describe to you tonight is a program that's coming this summer that's really going to focus on an aspect of prevention versus reaction. The program that we currently have is focused really on reaction to several environmental conditions that are at the beach, and we really want to do the public health job of looking at prevention rather than reaction. Part of this is all about new partnerships, partnerships that we formed in the last year, as well as continuing on with some old partnerships. And I'll talk about those in a minute. And what we want to provide, obviously, with any of our services here at the City of Evanston is a better service for our residents as patrons who also attend and take part in the beach. So that's what we're looking for. These are all aspects of a good public health program that we're looking at. So I'm going to give you some ideas about the beach tonight. So what we're looking at here is a picture that we all want for our beaches, two healthy kids having a good time at the beach, not worried about any kind of, being ill or any kind of problems at the beach. And so what we do as a health department is on a daily basis, we inspect every one of these 6 beaches that you see pictured up there. So this is a map that we've taken from the website. To give you an idea of these 6 beaches. You may see that Northwestern's beach is not pictured. They handle their own beach water quality program. And so, we follow up with them and they give us the water. We do some testing for them, but they keep those results. Now, our beaches are tested on a daily basis. So we have someone who's going out there each day, going about knee deep in the water, dipping a container in the water and testing that water. And I'll get the program's a little bit more specific in that, and I'll get a little bit more into that. Okay. Well, right now, I'm sorry.
Could you answer a question just
Sure,
as
please.
we're going along? Alderman Fisk?
Yeah, I'm just curious about the Northwestern Beach and
Yes.
why they do their own testing, and they don't report the results to us, or?
They send us a bottle of water on a daily basis. We test it for them, so we do get those results.
Okay.
But however, with this program, that they have not been involved because this program uses a collection of about 5 years of data, and so they weren't at the time when we started this. They were only interested in doing periodic sampling of their beach.
Okay, but we're going to include them so that 5 years from now we'll all be included.
We will be working with them. Yes.
Okay, because the Northwestern students are Evanston residents as well.
Absolutely, and they're
And the
very
water
important.
belongs to all of us.
Correct. Thank you. So the reaction. So the program right now is more reaction based than we'd like it to be. So we close a beach or have activities on the beach relating to all of these things. And you can see the long list there of why a beach can be closed. Everything from currents to lightning, weather conditions, biologic or chemical waste issues, which aren't very, which don't happen on are very rare. Are high E. coli levels, and that's one of the things that we as a health department are concerned about. And that's one of the things that we're testing on a regular basis. So when we test that water, when we pull a sample, what we're looking for is this. And while that looks, that's a pretty picture, the picture up there is E. coli, and that's one of the things that can cause severe stomach illness, especially in the young, the elderly, and anyone who's immunocompromised. And those are people we want to definitely protect while they're out there on the beach. So as we look at this, our call number is 235, and that means that if we test out the water, we usually put that on plates. We put that in an incubator overnight, and we look to see if it forms 235 units on a plate overnight. So we take the water in a sample bottle like this, and the only problem with that process that we see right now is that the current best practice, and this is nationwide, is that those samples take at least 18 hours to grow. And the inherent problem with that is we take water today. I can't report on the level that it is until the next morning at the earliest. And so that's one of the concerns. And you can see how the plating is done here, just to give you an idea. So what we really want to do is switch from that model of reacting to things to look at more of a model of preventing people from going in the water that's not healthy for them. And so what we want to do, the way that we do this, is we want to alter what we're looking at. And for the past 5 years, we've used the Environmental Protection Agency's Sanitary Beach Survey, which is a 2-page survey that focuses on many environmental factors that can lead to beach water closures. Because usually at the beginning of beach season, at the end, we get the same questions from press, from aldermen, from city staff. Why did the beaches close? And for the longest time, the answer has been the same. There are many different variables, and we don't have one that we can point to. And so we're trying to move on from that answer. Okay? So here we're looking at what causes a beach to close. So it's many things, and this is the data we've taken for the last 5 years. With general conditions, so air temperature, rainfall, waves. You can see the different aspects of that as far as general conditions on the beach. The water quality, what's the water temperature? Is there an odor to it? Is it turbid? Can you see through it? Is it clear? So all these things add to the water quality and may add to why a beach is closed. Bather load, how many people are in the water? How many people are swimming? How many people are out of the water? We look at those numbers as well. Pollution sources. Luckily, Evanston doesn't have any of these mysterious pipes that go out into the lake, putting out any kind of liquid. So we're in pretty good shape that way. But we want to look for things like floatables. What's floating in the water? What's out there? To get a good count if there's anything coming in from another source, from a shore that's further north or south, or anything coming across the lake. We're also looking for birds, gulls. Are they there? How many of them are there? What are they doing on the beach? Okay. And we're also focused on algae. So if anything's built up, I'm putting it as nicely as I can. So there's also algae, whether that's built up, because at times that can trap bacteria in it and push that out should there be any kind of, sorry.
Not coming from.
I'm sorry, I was going to ask you to explain more about algae. Algae, which is sometimes just a natural occurrence
Yes.
in a freshwater lake like this, but it indicates to you sometimes something else?
Yes, so if there's an algae buildup, what can happen in there is a couple of things. Water can build up in there, and anytime water gets stagnant, especially in warm weather, you can start to have bacteria build up in that band of algae. So if rainfall happens or heavy rainfall happens, it'll push that bacteria out into the lake and actually could cause a closure.
So the algae itself is not the problem, but rather what the algae can harbor.
That's true,
All right.
yes.
Alderman Fisk.
Oh, I thought Alderman Braithwaite was before me.
No.
Oh, you're not going to ask that question? Okay, all right. He's going to be politically correct and not ask the question. I thought it was really interesting in the chart that came out, I think it was last year, that of the Evanston beaches, the Dog Beach was one of the ones that closed the most infrequently. And would you say that's because there aren't people bathing at the beach, or because the dogs are keeping the birds from the beach, or a combination of?
Sorry. Yeah, it could be a combination of both. Mostly, I think it's because most people aren't going in any further than they are to call their dog back in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we use the same standard for Dog Beach?
Same standards as used. Okay. All right. So those are things that we've looked at to figure out what causes a beach to close. Okay. So what we do with all of that information, all of that data that we get, is we assign a weight to it. So I went to a training with the EPA in Ohio over the winter, and what we learned was to look at these different variables and assign weights to them. So, for example, if we have 10 gulls out there, that may be, that may give it a value of 2, or if we have a water temperature of 85, that's given a different value. And all those values add up to give us a prediction number. So, for example, if we have a rain event 24 hours before that day at the beach, if we have a number of gulls, if we have a high water temperature, if we plug those numbers into an equation, you could say that there is a 90% probability that your beach should be closed. And that's a much higher degree of certainty than we operate with now, knowing 18 hours later what the beach water is. And so that's where we're hoping to go to after this summer. It's to implement those types of equations and test those out at our beaches to really come to this predictability standard after this summer. So the things that I'm talking about right now will be tested over this summer for implementation next year. And hopefully I'll be able to report back to you in the fall what those results are and with favorable information.
Thank you, Mr. Kneva. So you're looking for this year for the predictions about the water quality to see if it corresponds to your actual findings regarding water quality.
Yes, we're taking the findings that we've had for the last 5 years. We are with the United States Geological Survey and a couple of our partners, putting them together to put these test equations out there. And then throughout the summer, we will test those. We'll test to see how accurate they are. And so if we have a good measure by the end of the summer, we may have 2 or 3 equations per beach to test out over the summer. And then at the end, we'll have a percentage where we know, okay, well, that was right 90% of the time, or this was right 75% of the time. It will help us choose what best model to go with at the different beaches.
So you can not only fine-tune those predictions for Evanston's beaches, but per beach as to each of our beaches. You can get that specific.
Yes, we can. We have that specific data.
Very cool.
So we developed these equations. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there another question? No, okay. So with this, we've involved several new partners as well as old partners. And here's the kind of view of those. The Illinois Department of Public Health provides the funding for all of this on a yearly basis, the testing, the ability for us to hire an intern to go out and collect the water, collect some data. The United States Geological Survey is taking part of this as far as developing a couple of the beach water equations. They've done this before with a couple different communities. And the US EPA has a study that goes further than this, which I'll talk about in a second. But with our own city, this is the closure data, which is the very basic data. I won't give you all the data that we've collected over the 5 years, but this is the data for at least these 5 beaches right now, where we've collected 5 years of data. And a good candidate for beach water testing is anything that has predominantly 10% more of closure. Now, that didn't happen very much in 2011, but if you remember last summer, it was a little bit drier, and we found that running our models and running the information, that rain does have a big role in predicting when a beach closes. So we think that in 2011, a lot of the lack of closure was caused by a lack of rain. So there's that data. As we go through, we've involved USGS, and as I've mentioned, there are other partners, and this is going on in other places. So Ohio has a Nowcast. Lake County, Illinois, the entire county has something called SwimCast that they're running right now. So this is a model that we're kind of following. The advantage that they have over us right now is this is who collects the data for them. They have buoys that are moored in the water, and that collects the data and sends a radio signal to a beach house, spits out a number with some paper on it, and says, here's your predictability. We haven't gotten a grant that large yet. This may be somewhere where we're going, but at this point, we're not capable of doing this at this point. Alderman Fisk asked how much that cost. What we've heard is somewhere between $20,000 and $25,000 just for the installation at one beach. Yes. And again, that's upkeep because you can see the solar panel on the back side of that, as well as all the equipment, and there's maintenance costs with that as well. So right now, our intern takes the role of a buoy, for lack of a better description.
Community, I'm sorry. Which community is
Oh, so Lake County, Illinois? Yes, as well as Ohio has Nowcast, which they're, oh, I'm sorry, yes.
So this whole county rate?
Yes, for a few beaches, not for all the entirety of the beaches, but their health department is using this data, this process as well. Okay. All right, so in addition to all of this, in the next 12 months, the United States Environmental Protection Agency is going to finish up a study that they're doing called the total maximum daily load. And basically what this study is going to tell us, they're surveying all miles of shoreline along Lake Michigan. And what they plan to what the result is out of this is to tell us why beaches close. So they're looking at geographically why a beach might close. Is there a depression? Is there a place where stagnant water can build up that gets washed out? Is there anything that they can see that potentially results in a beach closure? So they're going to release this information, I believe next spring is their date. When that information is released, it'll have each beach identified with possible ways of mitigating closures. What the hope is from that is that not just giving us direction on how to improve our beaches, but the hope is that will give us a really good information from the US EPA as far as research that may open up funding from other sources. Where we haven't gotten the ability to get funding from the Department of Natural Resources for potential habitat restoration, that might be something that we're opened up to that we've never been opened up. We as a community, as a city, have not been opened up to before. So there are funding possibilities from this study that are coming out. In addition, to kind of wrap up, our main goal is to make the beaches as safe as possible, as healthy as possible for those who visit, and we're going to try to provide a better service for residents. And I apologize for the typo here, but the 125,000 visitors were in 2011. I can't predict into the future of visitor numbers. And then an average year, and that's the last, I think, 5 to 10 years, is 117,000 actual visitors out there. So we have a lot of people involved in taking part in our beaches. So the next steps are obviously testing the formulas over this summer, reporting back results to this group, and to actually implement these formulas within the next year. Those are our goals. And again, this is, we're going to switch from the old model of reacting to things and try to prevent people from actually getting into the water. We're going to use those new partnerships to hopefully get maybe some new funding and to further support this program. And in the end, what we really want to do is provide a better service for residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there additional questions? Alderman Grover.
Compliment. This makes so much more sense. Rather than everyone wondering why we're closing the beach the day after the conditions existed that required the beach closure. This makes so much more sense. There's a lot more science involved here. That is the statistical science, not biological science involved. And I think it'll be really big improvement. Big improvement. And so I'm really curious to see what happens over this next year, whether our actual scientific data matches up with the statistical predictions, and if it confirms enough to go ahead with this. We'll be doing this anyway, don't we, Mr. Kavaneva?
Yes.
So this year is really just to figure out the fine-tuning of it.
That's
for
correct.
us. Great.
Yes.
Do you know by chance how effective it has been, or how efficient these models have been in Lake County or Ohio?
Yeah, from what I've seen, the data I've seen from Lake County, it's about 85% correct. I've not seen the Ohio data yet.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item for consideration, HH1, Township of Evanston, April 2012 monthly bills. Is there a motion to approve? Motion to approve. Okay, it's been moved in second. Alderman Grover?
It's just been interesting to me to see how much of our bills for the medical payments are accounted for by prescriptions at Walgreens for exactly those chronic diseases, diabetes and blood pressure, and those things that we want to do so much good preventative work on in Evanston with a federally qualified health center, something else, because that's the largest medical expense, I believe, for our general assistance clients is prescription drugs, and they all most of them tie to those chronic conditions.
Anyone else? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Motion carried. Next item is HH2. 1TO12, an ordinance proposed budget and appropriations ordinance for town purposes for year ending March 31st, 2013.
Move approval.
Ms. Vance or Ms. Wilson, you both signed up to speak to this, or just be here to answer questions? What is your preference? Okay. Right. Yeah, that might be helpful. There's a lot of information been put forth.
I just hit on some of the highlights. I won't go through the entire. The proposed budget for 2012-2013 looks at, in terms of the ordinance, of a decrease in the amount being asked for property tax levy for the township of $140,000 total. That's being a $40,000 reduction under the town fund and a $100,000 reduction under the general assistance fund. One of the things that this is majorly based on is I take a look at what the year-end fund balance is and how much money we actually got. And we actually got in more money than we had anticipated. And we're looking at a nice fund balance to balance it off. And then we're also in discussions with some other possible cost savings that we could do. So in terms of that, to make sure that we are able to maintain with the tax cap levy, but also making sure that we can reduce wherever we can. The major increases in the general assistance budgets basically comes with the proposed increase in the grant that's given to the general assistance clients. They have not received an increase in over 3 years. We're in a financial position to do it. And so what I took a look at was that we're looking at an average caseload. If you look at the report, we had 98 clients this previous month. So I'm balancing it off a prediction of about 100 clients a month. And so I'm proposing in the budget an increase from $400 a month to $500 a month, which is actually lower than what an SSI recipient gets. SSI recipient gets $689, and we actually, if we get a client on SSI, we can recoup back the money that we expended except for medical. We cannot get that amount back. Also, we took a look at the amount of that we're having to spend this prior year for medications, and did a little increase. We were able this past year not to have as many people having to be hospitalized, but our drug amount went up significantly, and that is an amount that's based upon the public aid reimbursement rate, not the rate that would normally be paid. So it could conceivably have been much higher than that. And also taking a look at what it actually costs for a room in Evanston. And I checked with the Y, for a room it's about $534 a month for a room at the Y. Also took a look at in terms of the emergency assistance services, which we can offer but is not mandated. We take a look at how much we're seeing people's actual bills come in. And what we've noticed, especially if they're in an emergency situation for utilities, we've noticed that they need substantially more than $750. And basing that on the maximum amount that the LIHEAP grant would give for emergency assistance, which is $1,000, our proposed level would be $1,000 also, and looking at the rental amounts going from $1,200 to $1,500. Emergency assistance services, you can only get it once within a year's period of time. It's not an automatic that you come back every year also on that. So those major increases. And then there's also inclusive in the budget a one-time equipment. We need to purchase new computers, our new visual GA system. We're having problems with our older computers and breaking down in the capacity. So that amount that we projected to need may go down if we're able to get that amount. We're working with the city manager to see about their vendors and see if they have a vendor that has computers with a lesser amount. So those are the major increases within the budget, but the budget does call for a reduction in the total tax levy and use of town fund balance.
Alderman Holmes?
Yes, Supervisor Vance. In terms of, if I'm understanding this correctly, only $200 is allowed for rent, right? That goes directly to the landlord.
That's the amount that goes directly to the landlord. It does not mean, say, for example, if we have a person that pays $350, then they would use part of their personal grant, the personal amount they get to subsidize it. Because what I actually took a look at in terms of where I was going to put the increase, I looked at the amount that people actually pay for rent. And the majority of the people, because a lot of our people do stay with their relatives or others in room house, so the majority of the people that would be okay, and we have quite a few people also who are on Section 8 housing vouchers, which put their rent amount at a lower amount, and we would just pay that. But they can technically use all of that $500 if they need be to pay that particular.
Yeah, and that's what, no, I understood that.
Okay.
But my question was going, because the example you used was the Y, which would just be a natural place to have, and especially men, to stay, and yet they could never afford it.
At the Y actually has, if I'm not mistaken, because I sit on the residence committee. The Y actually has, I think, is 5 slots set aside for potential general assistance clients. And what they allow them to do is to, in terms of their giving back, they allow them to work off the additional part in order to stay housed.
Okay, so do you know what that part would be? Because then they wouldn't have anything for any kind of personal use, right?
Right. But I don't know exactly how, with the Y, how they would work it out, but I do know they help subsidize.
Oh, okay.
Because they're subsidizing them now also, too. And also with the grant, people are also encouraged to, we make sure to try to get food stamps and other things, because we're still one of the few townships that does give direct personal. Others just pay the utility or the housing without regard to the fact that there are some personal needs also that people need to have.
Right, no, I understood that. I really understand all that. Just $500 a month for a room. And I understand that there's some other amenities at the Y, but that, it's, it really does knock out. It's wonderful to have 5 slots. I'm not denying that.
Right.
But that's something maybe that we ought to really talk to the Y about.
Yeah, and there are additional programs at the Y residence that can make it affordable at not the full cost. I'm on the residence committee, and there are a number of different ways to help these men work through their situation and to have a decent place to live, even if they are on the most modest of incomes.
Right. Absolutely.
And then, one of the other increases in the budget, if I remember correctly, isn't there a slight increase, and I can't pull it up in front of me right now, in terms of what you're providing for the community service projects at the township funds?
Oh, you're right. Under the town fund. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I mean, when I was
Right.
going through the budget.
Under the town fund, what we usually do with the township, if we have extra money or a fund balance, we try to help in terms of the mental health supported agencies. So right now, we currently fund totally the amount for peer services, and we fund totally the amount for the YWCA. In the proposed budget, because our budget year is a little off than the city's budget year, so ours would actually go into effect at the beginning January part, because ours doesn't into March. I have a proposed $80,000 for support of the mental health funded agencies in the budget. Increase, because they only got this fiscal year, they got $5,000 each, so it's a total of 6.
Alderman Grover.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Supervisor Vance. I think we're all glad for reducing the amount of the township levy using the fund balance, because there had been a large fund balance for a long time, and to use that to bring down the levy amount is, I think, a smart thing to do. Thank you for that. I think you've already answered all my questions, my notes from legal fees, anticipating legal fees.
I put in legal fees. You have to realize we do not have a township attorney. After there became a conflict with the city's attorney, so there's a possibility we will have to look into that, because the township attorney is not just for the township trustees. The township attorney is for any other township officials that may have questions. I may have a legal question in regards to GA, whether or not I could do something legally that I need an opinion upon. And with the conflicting out, I have actually been informed I can't ask the legal counsel anything because it's considered a conflict. So I don't know how to handle that.
So in those circumstances, but last year, did you incur any legal expenses? In your last budget year, I don't remember.
The only legal expense that was incurred and not paid was for Mr. Pellini. The other legal expenses that were paid out were in regards to the prior assessor's bill.
And that's resolved now?
Yeah,
I assume.
As far as I'm concerned,
Yeah.
We have not received any more legal bills. Right.
And are we continuing discussions with the city staff about consolidation of services or finding ways, at the very least, for the cost savings in accounting and the Office Depot account. And
We actually started
purchases.
those last year. And in fact, we're still in discussion. I had hoped and projected by February that we'd have more, but we're still in discussions on that. And I know we've already worked out some things with the Home Depot, and we're working on the storage upstairs and getting to move out. So we are still in discussion on working those out to see where we can come up with final cost savings. So we are still in discussion with the city manager on that.
Right. Who's here?
And if I may, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, just to amplify on a couple of things that Supervisor Vance indicated. First, regarding the law department, I've asked Mr. Farrar to revisit the issue of the conflict and to make a determination if that, in his opinion, has passed, and if so, we'll be coming back to you with a separate communication, because I think it would make sense, if practical, to once again have the law department serve as the township attorney. So Mr. Farrar is very cautious regarding conflicts and wanted to take a little bit of time to review that, so he is doing that, and I would hope, as I think you're aware, we're looking at a meeting of the Township Board here over the next several weeks, and hopefully would have that to discuss. And just to amplify, both the Township Supervisor, the Township Assessor, and I met, I guess it was last week, to start up once again those discussions that we had put on hold through the ballot initiative process about opportunities for ways for us to work more closely together administratively. As the supervisor indicated, I think we're in the final stages of moving the storage upstairs to the attic, so I think that will be a several $100 savings a month over time, so that's a good thing. We are talking to them about computers and telephones to see what makes sense there. The township has had a long desire to have a website, and so I've asked Eric Storley and our Citizen Engagement Division just to move forward with a website that can have general information, have minutes of meetings, agendas. So that is moving forward as well. So I feel very confident that we can continue to look at those economies. I think there are larger questions, however, for the full Township Board on next steps regarding Evanston Township. So hopefully that will be discussed here in the next several weeks. But in the meantime, we're committed from the city's perspective to continue to move forward and work with the Township Assessor, the Township Supervisor, and their staffs on other ways. And again, the meeting was very, very amicable, friendly meeting, and I think we made a lot of good progress putting the issues of the last several months behind us and moving forward to see how we can use all the taxpayer money of the City of Evanston, the taxpayer money of the electors of Evanston Township in the best way possible.
Thank you. Assessor Wilson, do you want to speak to your part of the budget?
Thank you, Chairman Tendon and trustees. Unless you have some questions about the budget, I really tried to work hard to lower the budget, but I couldn't because of the one of the staff people have gotten health insurance, family health insurance, which we didn't have before. One staff has no health insurance. The other staff person I hired does have family health insurance, so that increased the budget quite a lot. And as the city manager mentioned, we're trying to keep the IT budget a little, hopefully lower that if we work with the city to help us with IT issues that we have. And also any other questions that you have regarding the budget, I'll be happy to answer for you. But that's, and also Nick Pavletic and I, the deputy assessor, will be starting to take classes for our certification that we have to do for this year. We have 2 classes that we need to take this year to continue our CIAO certification, and actually we'll both be going to Wheaton this week for 3 days to take one of the classes. And hopefully the classes that we take won't cost the township that much money, just mostly in travel. And I might have to go to Springfield once to take an additional class. Do you have any other questions?
I don't think there are additional questions. Thank you.
Well, I would also like to make an announcement about just a general announcement on about the assessments and tax bills that are coming out. I'd like to announce that the Cook County property tax bills this year will be mailed in late June and should be due by August 1st. And this will mark the earliest mailing date and due date for second installment tax bills in more than 30 years. I'd also like to mention that anybody that did not apply for their senior exemption or senior freeze, that will not be on your tax bill if you haven't applied already. So you need to come to our office, and we need to we'll probably send you to the Cook County Assessor's Office to change the tax bill, because that time has closed. So you'll have to do a certificate of error if you don't get your senior freeze and your senior exemption and the homeowners and the long time and the disabled exemptions. If you haven't applied for them by today, they will not be on your second installment. And just to mention that we did help over 25 taxpayers receive certificate of errors for missed exemptions, which was a total of $38,846. $100,000. This does not include what I mentioned at my annual township meeting. And also, the Board of Review will open sometime in late June or early July for 2012 appeals. And just to say again that our office is open from 8:30 to 5, Monday through Friday, and our number is 847-332-2465 at 846 Dodge.
Could you repeat the amount of
$38,846.52.
And that was over a period of?
From April 2nd through today.
Thank you. Are there other questions for Assessor Wilson? No? Thank you.
Okay.
Are there other questions regarding or discussion regarding the proposed township budget? There is a motion on the floor. If we are of a mind to send this to council, we should vote on the motion.
I have a question. I'm sorry.
Alderman Holmes.
I think I put it in. We received some literature this weekend, and in one of the magazines, Township Perspective, that one. I think that's the one it was. I thought I stuck it in here. It talked about the townships. I don't know if it's a pension plan or some kind of employment plan where they are giving the township employees some kind of reimbursement. Did you see that? Oh. I'm so sorry. I thought I put it in here because I wanted to ask about that. What made me think about it was I was looking at the IMRF amount on the assessor's budget in terms of the increase, which was over a $5,000 increase. And so everyone there belongs to that, but do you also belong to a township thing? That's what I was really asking. I will, you know what,
If you forward it to me, I'll take a look at it, but the only pension plan that employees of the township participate in is Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund.
Okay.
That is the plan.
There was a whole article, and they were making a big deal about giving people who had 21 years of service and over a really large amount of money back. It's an article, and
We'll take us out because I have not gotten my perspective yet, but If you send that, we can take a look at it. But we belong to the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, and they determine each year what portion we have to pay, and then the employees also have to pay a portion of it.
I
So,
understood,
okay.
but it just reminded me when I looked at that I wanted to ask that question in terms of, did the Evanston program belong to it has a name, it's like TORI.
You're talking TARMA.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
That's what it was.
The TARMA is the insurance program, the self-insured program that's set up for townships. It is the one that covers the workman's comp, the liability, and everything. And each year, what happens is if you're a part of TARMA, we have a premium we have to pay. I think ours is like $8,000 and some dollars. Each year, if they do not expend a certain amount, you get a proportion back. And I think our proportion that we got back was like $1,200 that came back, but that goes back into the General Assistance Fund because it's paid out of General Assistance. It does not go to employees.
Oh, okay, so
No.
the people that were receiving the checks were like maybe the supervisors?
They were probably,
Because they got lots and
right,
lots of
they're
pictures.
township officials, the supervisors and everything, because some people had a photo op that they
Yes.
get the check back and whatever, but it's not going to employees. It's just a reimbursement on for the premium that you paid.
Oh, okay.
Right, that's reduces that. It
I
does
think
not
the
go
amount
to,
this
it's TARMA. It does not go to the employees.
Okay.
Okay.
And the amount this year is like over almost $1,900. So I was thinking, wow.
Right, yeah, that's the portion of that comes back. They share in those who participated in the TARMA, but it
Okay.
does not go to employees.
Okay. Thank you.
Additional questions? So with a motion on the floor, we can choose to send this on to the town
To the council. yeah.
council,
So moved.
or to hold it here for additional time to look at it, discuss it.
That's what we got it. I mean, that's what we got our packet was to look at it, right?
Yes, we haven't had it that long. I just wanted to make sure
I would move
that,
that we move ahead with it.
but that's the motion on the floor. Those in favor of
Second that. then.
those in favor of the amendment, the motion to move it to council, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next item for consideration is HH3, update on the Harley Clark Mansion. I believe that our city manager, Wally Bobkowitz, will help guide us through this discussion and make a request of us.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, good evening again. As you know, the issue of the Harley Clark Mansion and its future use has been before the City Council now probably for the last 9 months or so. We came to you back in February, on February 13th at the full council with looking for direction to move forward with the process for the sale of the facility. I'm here this evening asking that you recommend to the full council moving forward with that through a first step that would be a request for information and authorizing the staff to issue a request for information. In your packet is the draft request for information as well as some renderings of the site to give you a sense of what we're talking about. First and foremost, I think as we have talked about this, is what exactly would we be proposing for sale? And if you'll look at the maps that are attached just behind the staff report, you'll see a proposed area in an orange color, which we are working with the Community and Economic Development Department and the Law Department on drafting a new parcel map for the boundaries of just the facility, the coach house, which would be made available. So I think that's probably the most critical piece of this, is that we are proposing the subdivision of the parcel so that that land would be what would be sold, yet still allowing for ample community access to the parks and to the beach. I think as we've talked before, the Lighthouse Landing area has multiple parcels with multiple owners, and you can see on the maps that the parcel in which the house sits on is a much larger parcel. So again, we are looking at if we move forward with this, to subdivide that parcel. The request for interest is pretty straightforward. We would make this available with the council's concurrence for a period of time to have people, individuals as well as other interested parties express their interest in this. We would offer a walkthrough of the facility on the 21st of May, and then would ask that we receive proposals back by June 15th. We would then look at those proposals, come back to the council with a request for proposal. We believe that we could have that request for proposal out on the street by the end of July, and then have those back in 45 days and be in a position to select a qualified purchaser sometime in the month of September. We have talked about this at previous meetings, potentially being a long-term lease or a sale. At this point, I'm proposing to the council that we pursue only a sale. With the discussions with other arts groups, we continue to work closely with the Evanston Arts Center, and certainly has been mentioned by the council, Mayor Tisdall, over time that the city would be anxious to entertain proposals to assist the Evanston Arts Center in its relocation from the site. Having a long-term lease will not provide any kind of significant dollars to assist with that. We also continue to have discussions with the tenants at the Noyes Cultural Arts Center. Again, I think that an opportunity to divest ourselves of the buildings and then to take that money and reinvest in the community really precludes the ability for a long-term lease. So this proposal is looking for interested purchasers, not interested leasers. And we'll see what we get. But I think, again, as we look at some of our long-term goals with the arts in Evanston, a lease does not help accomplish some of those long-term goals because it just won't provide the funding to do that. And I think that the work that's required both on the inside and the exterior of the buildings, I think would really be a disincentive for any purchaser to make those improvements, even under some sort of long-term lease. So, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, we're asking this evening that you send this on to council next week for their endorsement, and then with that, we would issue this request for interest. We also propose to take out advertisements in local newspapers and also to erect a small sign that would be placed in front of the property to make interested parties aware of the process. Be happy to answer any questions.
Alderman Grover.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Bobkowitz, a request for information is the same as a request for interest. I think the agenda says one and the document says the other. I'm assuming it's the same. And then assuming a yes, my second
yes,
question,
I'm sorry. And we were looking at interest. I think that's a mistake on my part. So it is an interest, not information.
A request for interest, not a request for information. And then have we considered the idea of separating the building from the property and retaining the property, kind of like the way a land trust operates, and selling the building itself but retaining the property below it?
Alderman Grover, members of the committee, that is not something that we've looked at specifically. I don't think there's anything to preclude us from doing that. So if that would be the recommendation, these documents are all still in draft form. We could either make that as the offer, or we could offer that as an option.
As an alternative?
For interested parties.
Alderman Fisk.
Thanks, Wally. Generally, I have not changed my opinion that we should not be selling this land off. It's valuable lakefront land. We're so short of it. At least my ward mostly is covered by Northwestern Campus to the east, so access to the lake is really important to them, both at the north and south end of the ward. But I think in the longer run, we would never get this property back. It would never. It would be gone forever, and we're very lucky to have it. I think Alderman Grover makes a good point, and I think we should take a look at that. I think that some of the folks that I'm thinking would be interested in the property, I don't think would be turned away because of the lease. The question really is, if I'm hearing you correctly, that we would lack then the funds to relocate the tenants at the Art Center. And I think we can probably have a discussion about what fundraising we might be able to do that would accomplish that without giving away this piece of property. It's a local landmark. It makes a great statement. It's on my dog walking route, so I'm very familiar with it. If I were purchasing the property, I would be a little bit concerned about the impact of the public on that land, with the beach entrance right there and so many people, using the parking lot. That is obviously going to impact the property. So it's unlikely, I think, that a single-family homeowner or a family would be interested in it. It's more likely we're going to have an organization of some sort or commercial use of the property, and I think they would be more open to the possibility of a leasehold or something of that sort. So I want to encourage you to do that. Again, this is such a treasure, and lakefront property is really almost impossible for us to come by. I think it would be, I think it's just lacking foresight and would be pound fool. What is it? Penny foolish, pound whatever. Penny wise and pound foolish. Thank you. That end of the day is. But I think that it's really important that we think a little bit more creatively on this.
Alderman Grover.
Thank you again. It's always about the sale of a city asset, and this is an extraordinary asset, mostly because of its location. The building itself is a dilapidated treasure at this point. It really is an extraordinary building. I'm just looking to find a way to kind of minimize the size of the asset we're selling, but still accomplish our other goals in finding a good place for the relocating the Evanston Arts Center, and so forth. So, and I don't know how that affects the coach houses that we have spent money on to shore up, but they all need work on the inside. And then, of course, the way it's drawn now, it includes a lot of the original Jens Jensen gardens, originally designed for this location, that are really quite extraordinary. And I believe as well a grotto that one of our residents has personally invested money in refurbishing so that it's now operational. It's to the south side of the house. So there's been a lot of local investment as well in just the grounds of the property that I don't know if they'll be better off in private hands as opposed to public hands tended by private interests, but I think we ought to, if it's possible, Mr. Bobkowitz, create another option for how we divest ourselves of this asset in a way that serves the community best.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry.
Alderman Fisk.
I have just one more question. Can you tell me how much you think it would cost to relocate the tenants from the Art Center? I mean,
No.
You can't tell me that. And I know you can't tell me how much you think we would get for the house.
No, I can't.
Okay.
We are in the final stages of an appraisal, and at an appropriate time, that will be something that we would bring to executive session.
Okay. So, but if we're looking at basically being able to relocate the people from the Art Center and really not making any money on the house, I think then it really doesn't make any sense to do this. And to my mind, it makes more sense to just keep them there. I mean, I just can't see this making any sense to me.
Who's going to fix the building?
Well, we're going.
I mean, isn't that part of the issue? I mean, it's that we can't afford to fix it.
We can't afford to fix it, but we're going to be relocating all these folks, so we're not getting any money from the sale of the building other than relocating the tenants at the Art Center. I don't see that makes any sense for us to do. I think that's something that really can be accomplished through fundraising.
Well, why do we have to fundraise to do that? I mean,
Well, I think that's where we really need to keep the asset and fundraise to relocate the tenants at the Art Center.
I know there's quite a discussion going on with the Evanston Art Center about their location in the community and staying here, and what would give them the best future here. But I'm of a similar mind with Alderman Grover that we should look at the the piece itself, the house and coach house itself, as the asset to be leased or sold and maintained as much of the grounds as possible. I do think there are better places for the Arts Center.
And that's fine, as long as we're only selling the house. We're only selling the buildings, and we're retaining ownership of the land underneath.
And Alderman Fisk, members of the committee, again, you've not had an opportunity to discuss any of this. This was brought in a draft form to have the discussion you're having. And so, Mr. Chair, if it's the desire of the committee, we can make an adjustment that it would be, the property would not be on the table. It would be just the buildings and either a purchase or a lease. My concern about the lease is that it will not provide any kind of corpus. It will help, hopefully, preserve the buildings, potentially under the right type of lease, but it will not provide any kind of dollars to assist with relocation. So are you comfortable with just sale of the buildings and retaining the property, or do you want to look at the gamut of the sale or lease of the buildings and see what kind of interest is generated?
I'd like to see options, I think. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I think a range of options. I know it confuses the issue a little bit, but I think it'd be interesting to find out what the public interest is, and even though I would strongly favor just selling the existing buildings, is that something you could
certainly? And again, that's the staff's proposal is to do this in multiple steps.
Right.
The first step is to gain a real understanding of what their interest in the community and the marketplace is, and I think it's very reasonable to craft that request for interest however the council feels appropriate, and then see what we get, and then make additional decisions beyond that.
Alderman Holmes.
Wally, do we have an idea of costs for the relocation? I mean, what kind of dollars are we talking about?
Well, in discussion, and Nora Dietrich, the executive director of the Arts Center, is here, and she may wish to add to these comments, but we are having discussions with them. It is clear that for them to obtain a new building, they are going to need assistance, and that assistance will likely be in the form of some combination of a grant or a loan or both in order to help them gain occupancy. They would indeed do fundraising over time, but they don't have the corpus of the money that would be needed to relocate available now. I think they're looking at more purchase than lease over time. So I think the order of magnitude is not in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think it is beyond that. And so the idea was that a sale of the property and the buildings would certainly generate sufficient amount of dollars. If it's a long-term lease or just a sale of the buildings, it generates less cash. As you all know, the city has other ways to be helpful through other revenue sources. But I think as we started talking about this about a year ago, the idea was to if we could, to have other uses at the Harley Clark Mansion, taking the dollars generated from that to be helpful to the Arts Center. How that ultimately all transpires, I think is still undetermined.
Okay, I guess I get it. I hear you. I guess I just have. I remember the conversations, and when I think of relocation, and in terms of doing that, in terms of purchasing a building, I just didn't see that, and maybe with the purchasing a new building for them, I didn't realize that was part of the.
And Alderman Holmes, I don't know that a purchase of the building would be part of this. My sense is that we would help them craft a package that may make sense. There might be an opportunity for us to be partners in the financing, and there might be opportunities for us to be partners in a forgivable loan. I mean, I think there's lots of different ideas. There may be opportunities if they were to find a building that was larger than their needs for us to participate in the purchase of that and then use a portion of that building for city purposes. And all of those things have been discussed. There's been no real decisions. And again, one of the purposes of coming this evening was to begin this conversation because really heretofore it's only been talked about in very general terms. My recommendation to the council is now is the time, if we're going to move forward with it, we need to talk in more specific terms along the lines that Alderman Holmes are raising. We just haven't, that discussion just has not taken place yet.
Oh, okay, all right.
Alderman Fisk?
Yeah, I think we should take a look also. Northwestern has actually handled their property really well over the long term. As you all know, the Royce Moore School just moved out after, I think it was a 90 or maybe 100-year lease on that property, where Royce Moore owned the buildings, but Northwestern owned the land underneath. And now, 90 years later or 100 years later, the university has a use for that property, and the school has moved on to somewhere else. And I think that it's our responsibility here to future generations of Evanstonians who might value that lakefront to be able to hang on to the land. Alderman Grover and Holmes, I hope that's all right. I'm sorry. That's okay. Just trying to understand. Okay.
Alderman Grover?
Mr. Bobquist, is there any disadvantage to issuing a request for interest that asks for a response on selling buildings plus land, selling only buildings?
Absolutely
and creating
none.
options?
Absolutely none.
Right.
Again, the reason staff is proposing the two steps is because of all the issues that have been raised this evening. There are many unanswered questions, and I think that by having a request for interest, we'll see who those parties are with whatever parameters the council feels appropriate to set out. If you get 50 people with lots of interesting ideas, then I think the council deals with it. If you get no one, that also tells you something. But I think the first step is to let the larger community know that there's an interest by the city of Evanston to do something different in a formal way and see what the responses are. So I think all the things that have been suggested, we will take, Mr. Chair, what I think I hear the committee saying is we will take off the table the idea of the sale of the property, that all that would be available is the use of the buildings, and we would have people express their interest in either the purchase of the buildings or a long-term lease of the buildings. And see what we hear from the larger community.
I'm not opposed to giving them a broader range than that, but those are the two options I think, as far as I'm concerned personally, and I think it's kind of the consensus here of this committee that we're uncomfortable with selling land versus the two buildings. So, if you think that will generate interest, I would say certainly that's the direction I would go.
And I think that at this early stage, better to have the council's wishes be, this is the city's property. So I think have the council express whatever you think is most appropriate. Let's see what we get. If we get no responses, then I think the question comes back to this committee, and the committee and the full council need to rethink the entire issue. But we won't know until we know.
Sure. I believe we have a speaker. Is that correct?
Sure.
Okay. Sorry.
Hi, since I'm here, Nora Diedrich, Director of the Evanston Arts Center. So I just wanted to say thank you to City Manager and Mayor Tisdall for working with us so closely. We have enjoyed being in the home for over 40 years, and we feel that we can better serve this community and the many constituents we have now if we were in a different sort of location, near the L, near the Metro perhaps, in an urban situation. So while we've really enjoyed the home and we thank you all for letting us be there so long, we have done a strategic plan, and we really have found that the need for us to be in a more urban setting is significant. We are prepared to do a capital campaign. We have worked with a fundraising consultant, so we are more than willing to work towards contributing to this effort. Again, thank you all, and we look forward to working with you all. Thank you.
Alderman Grover?
One last question, Mr. Bachwitz. Do we have any ballpark idea of what it would cost to renovate the building?
I've retained a firm to do a very specific analysis of what it will cost. We have had one that is 6 or 7 years old. We're not comfortable with that, and so we have retained a firm to do that. So prior to any decisions other than receiving these expressions of interest, the full council will have that report, will have an appraisal of the property. So once we get the expressions of interest, I think all the information you will need to make an informed decision you'll have at that point.
And anybody who would be interested, who would respond to our RFI, would have done their own work to figure out what the renovation costs would be for their own purposes, I'm assuming.
And absolutely, and my guess is that the city at that appropriate time would likely make that information available.
Sure.
Under certain circumstances. Certainly what we've done with the Crown RFP process is we did some additional work and have made that information available to the responders, the proposers at that point, to help them with their proposals. So it would probably be in our best interest to provide as much information as we have to interested parties when we get to that point.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
So,
you have proper direction?
I'd appreciate a motion forwarding
Okay.
forwarding the request for information for interest to the council with my direction to make the adjustments as recommended by the committee.
Okay. Would you like to make the motion?
I will make that motion.
Second.
Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. That concludes our regular agenda. I understand we have one more citizen that would like to make a comment, Mr. Cree.
My name is Madeline Decree, Fifth Ward, and I won't be long. There's a few things that I need to bring to the committee, Human Services, and I don't know if this is going to fit, but it's dealing with human beings, so I would imagine this is the place for it. And about the speaking, I'm just hoping that the council, the Human Services Committee here, will realize how important it is that people be able to speak at these committee meetings, because a lot of people don't feel comfortable at the city council meeting. And I can understand that. And I think you all know me by now, small, large, or big, I'm going to say what's on my mind. It may not come out right all the time, but I'm going to say it. And I hear people talking out there, so usually if I hear people talking and they're hurting, I'm going to say something. And one of those things is speaking, and I just spoke on that. The second thing is the water bill. I caught Mrs. Vance out there, and I want to talk to the assessor's office because a lot of people are concerned about their water bills, me included. But they cannot pay all of this water bill that, it's going up. So what alternatives do they have? The taxes that's coming up in August. Most people did not plan for those tax bills to come through in August. And they're saying, what the heck am I going to do? Fix income, et cetera. So can they come to the city for anything? Can they come to where are some of these people are going to go? And I'm not just talking about poor people in South Evanston, poor people in the Fifth Ward. I'm talking about people, period, in general. But I also, another thing that some of the people were concerned about, the HELP program. For me, I didn't even know. I thought Ms. Thomas was on the HELP program, and we were going to have a HELP program here. Someone told me, oh, where have you been? That fell through. I said, you've got to be kidding. Because when they go down to Evanston Hospital, the out clinic, those people make you wait 6 months, 3 months. So what to do, Another thing is the housing. I found out, I got a piece of paper from the city saying that want to add on rezoning or whatever, less than half a block in my area. And of course, I says, where is this? What's happening? So I went and talked to the neighbors, and some of the neighbors said that they're talking to the people, and they're talking about an NSP1. NSP1, what? And they're saying that that different people are buying up houses in the Fifth Ward. 6 houses, 7 houses. Am I exaggerating? I asked my alderman, did I not? Say, did you hear anything like this? How come we don't know about this? Is it a group home? Is it disability? What is it? And I know that people don't need to tell everybody where they're buying or whatever, but I have a problem with that. I'm sorry. You coming in my block, I want to know what's coming into my block as much as possible. And it's not because I'm nosy, I want to know. like anybody else, any other community. Also, I was against the Trader Joe thing, but I'm still concerned about that parking lot. But I've been on the phone all weekend talking to my sister, my daughter in Oregon and California and Washington, and I haven't seen any Trader Joe there, but they're very, oh yeah, it's beautiful store, Trader Joe. Can Evanston afford this? I said, what are you talking about, Evanston afford this? Why not? But anyway, I said, that's not the issue, but they're very supportive of it. So I said, oh, well, what the heck, if I'll give it a, give it a try, So, but anyway, I need, for the Human Services Committee to really think about these things. And the township, they want to know where they can go. So I was just asking Ms. Vance, can these people come to them for help, for the water bill, tax? I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe all those questions can be answered by various staff departments, and I'm certain that we can direct those questions in the proper direction. Alderman Holmes?
I just wanted to say to the city manager, one of the reference that Ms. Decree spoke about is something that she and I discussed when she called me, and that is the properties that were bought by Remlin Services, and they are establishing group homes. There's one at 1826 Foster, which will be open on, I believe, June 1st as an open house. And I had an email from the director where there's two others, one which is 1934 Brown, which is several doors from Mrs. Decree's, and there's another one on that I know about in the 2100 block of Dewey. And part of the issue, and I had discussed this with Mr. Murphy, Jeff Murphy, some time ago, in terms of they do not have to have permission to establish these homes in certain neighborhoods. In fact, Alderman Breathwaite and I talked about this some time ago because I was saying to him that I thought maybe it would be good PR for them to at least let the alderman know that they were coming into the ward. So I'm just saying that's what that reference, and I don't know what we can do about it. I guess obviously we can't do anything about it. People are getting mixed up because they think that it's the NSP $2 that the city has, and it's not at all. It is the first NSP $2 that was issued by the government, not the second round. We got the second round, they got the first round. So that is an issue, and I don't know how many. I know that the director told me they had 8 homes in Evanston. They have 14 in all. I don't know where they're all are established in Evanston, but I know now that there's going to be at least 3, and there may be even more in the 5th ward. And I'm going to ask the staff to let us know where they're located, because I think people should know. Residents ought to have a right to know what's coming into their neighborhoods. So that's where that's coming from. I can answer, at least I can give some information on that one.
Thank you. Any other comments, communications?
Move to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.